Lindsay said I should get started, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. It's a small group, so certainly if you have questions, ask in the middle of things, just let me know. I like to do my presentations as a conversation because there's a lot for us to unpack. So first, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Alta. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the Domestic Violence Intervention Program, or DVIP, as people fondly call it. I started my work with DVIP about 22 years ago. I was a volunteer in the youth department, had my own kids, took some time off from that, and came back as a committee member and a board member. I served in that role for 6 years, and then I became staff 5 years ago in this position. My title is very long, but it essentially means that I talk a lot about domestic violence, and I talk a lot about victim survivor stories and their needs and just how we can support them. So it's a little bit about me. I live here in Iowa City. I grew up here. I've got 2 young boys. One is 4 and one is 14, which is, I like to say we have all of the emotions in our house. We have a dog and 3 cats of varying ages as well. So it's a noisy, messy house, and they are all safely at home right now. Most likely excited that there's a storm coming. So I'm going to start out just with a really general question. How many of you have heard of DVIP before? All of you, beautiful. So some of this you may already know, some of it might be a surprise. I will try not to bore you, but if you need to back up or answer anything, just holler, okay? So as you know, DVIP started in 1979. We were awarded a grant to find out if there were services needed in the Iowa City area for domestic violence victims. Needless to say, that grant was never fully fulfilled in the way that it originally was intended, because the day that it hit the presses, we had a line of individuals outside of the Women's Resource and Action Center seeking help. And so immediately, the advocates working on that project got right to work. So when we opened our first shelter in 1980, we served only Johnson County until 1991, when we took over what we now fondly call our northern tier, which is Iowa, Cedar, Washington, and Johnson counties. We also briefly served folks in Jones County. Our service region now serves 8 counties. So our southern tier is Henry, Des Moines, Lee, and Van Buren. So those of you that might not be super familiar with your counties, that's essentially from the Outlet Mall over to Tipton, and then all the way down to Missouri and over to Illinois and the Burlington area. In 1997, the state of Iowa had 33 domestic violence programs, and currently there are actually now 8, not 10. I need to update that slide, I apologize. So during my presentation, and this statistic is one that startled me when I first read it, but on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States, which means during my presentation, approximately 400 individuals will be physically abused. 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 women, 1 in 3 women, and 1 in 4 men will be impacted by intimate partner violence in their lifetime. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But DVIP provides services. We provide comprehensive services for victims of intimate partner violence. As you can read up there, but if any of you would like to name some of the ones that you know off the top of your head, and then we'll sort of fill in the blanks from there. Either Mary, have any that you can think of, or Hazel?
In terms of services?
Yep, just the services we provide in general.
Well, housing, shelter, support.
Shelter, housing, yes.
Support.
Yep.
You know, the person, the kids, the dog.
Yeah, exactly. So we provide emergency shelter and long-term housing support, so we will assist people in finding permanent housing as well. Over 70% of our clients that we've served have found permanent housing, which is super exciting. We also, as Hazel mentioned, support those pets. So we offer Cooper's House, which is the state's only in-emergency shelter pet sheltering program for pets of victim survivors. We have 3 cat condos and 2 dog kennels that allow those individuals to bring those animals with them. We also have sheltered everything from a potbelly pig to a bearded dragon to a longhorn steer and a few snakes along the way as well. So we do not, as we say, we serve all victims and survivors, even the smallest, furriest, scaliest ones. We also offer a 24-hour hotline. One of the common misconceptions about our hotline is that it's only for the victim and survivor. That is not true. You can call yourself and say, hey, I'm really worried about my niece. I'm really worried about my friend. I don't know how to have this conversation with them. I don't know how to help. And our advocates can help give you some of that language and tools to help navigate how to best support a victim survivor. Of course, that hotline number is also available to the individual in need as well. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, emergencies, pandemics, all included. We are always available. We also offer mobile advocacy. This one is one that is very dear to my heart. I grew up for about 6 years in rural Iowa and watched that program close that was closest to us. Now it's a 2.5-hour drive for individuals in my hometown to make to get to an emergency shelter for DP. But our mobile advocates go to where victims feel the safest. So if you live in rural Meade County and the best time for you to perhaps do some safety planning and figure out your next steps and what you need to do to keep yourself and your family safe, our advocate can meet you at the grocery store where you do your weekly shopping. We can meet you after a book club. We can meet you after church or during a youth activity like dance practice or something like that. So we go to where victims are when they feel the safest and where they feel the safest. We also offer support services for youth, prevention, education, counseling, support groups, and non-judgmental confidential services. So, in addition to all those things, one of the things that I hear a lot is how COVID-19 affected us, or that's a big question. Our emergency shelter is a 40-bed unit, and since we opened it in 1993, it has been full 365 days out of the year, every day. The pandemic forced us to, at first, disperse those individuals into hotels and apartments throughout the area. So our advocates actually would drive a loop and check in on each individual where they were, but we had to sort of remove the communal living situation. We are now repopulating back full, and so we are getting rid of our apartments and everybody's moving back under that roof, but it has changed the way that our advocates have really looked at trauma-informed care and how to best support an individual. About 350 folks are actually diverted into other programs or locations because our 40-bed unit is full. And we'll talk a little bit more about those numbers in a little bit. We have seen a continuous increase because of the pandemic. We've had a 28% increase in hotline calls every month since May of 2020. That has not changed. We are now in May of 2022, which this May is about 40% higher than the May we were originally compared to 2019. So, why the work matters. Obviously, you guys have heard about us. You're here. You know the work that we do is vital to the survival of individuals and their families. In the past, there were safe houses. People could go to a friend or family members. However, an abuser knows all of the places that they would go to seek safety, and that isn't the safest solution. And then COVID-19 and various other strains on families have prevented a lot of people from being able to seek that support that they would normally get from their communities. So kiddos, as I said, I'm a mom of 2 boys. I think about the statistic every day, and every time I have them. 15.5 million children in the United States witness domestic violence annually. Children are deeply affected by what occurs in the home, and though individuals think that maybe they don't notice or don't see or don't know, 100% of the time the kids do know, and it does affect them. We have served 150 children in our emergency shelter alone in the last year. And obviously, in the years prior, that number stays pretty consistent. And so we have a very robust youth program that does everything from helping them navigate school systems, helping to bridge that difference in family relationships. A lot of times kids have to grow up way earlier than they should in an abusive home, and so we help to balance that out with a parent and teaching them how to parent and teaching the kid how to be a kid. Of those kids that we have at our shelter, often they say that it is their favorite place in the entire world. They are completely safe and they get to play. We pride ourselves in letting kids be kids and giving them that space. So all sorts of fun things. We have 2 amazing youth advocates that work with those kiddos. Men also experience domestic violence. We don't often think of that, but 4 in 10 have experienced at least some form of coercive control, and 1 in 4 have been physically abused. We see men at our shelter. We serve men throughout our programming, and we have men that work at our shelter. And that is something that has changed over the years, but it's a common question. Back in the late 70s, it was very much a women's issue, and we've seen more men come forward as time has allowed them to sort of become more comfortable with that, and we start to really talk about domestic violence. So, as I said, we get to numbers. We have served over 2,189 individuals in fiscal year 2021. We are just coming up on the end of fiscal year 2022, so when I am back here in October, I'll be at the main campus presenting. I'll have all of our new numbers of how this past year has been for us. But in 2021, we served 2,189 individuals. We provided over 17,000 nights of safety. That is within the emergency shelter and our transitional housing spaces and apartments. So that's sort of a rubric that does not necessarily include all of the hotel stays or moving people to other programs throughout the country. In Johnson County, so where we are, we've served 1,500 individuals and provided over 6,000 services to those folks. One of the biggest changes that we've seen over the last year and a half is the number of services per person that we need to provide. And that is because of the food insecurities, that is because of financial constraints, that is because of the housing issue. Folks that are coming to us need more than just that emotional support or navigating a court system or the legal system or DHS, but they also need help with lots of vital, basic necessities in addition to those other support services we provide. So, one of the things when I chatted with Dan about wanting to present here, that him and I talked about, was that the red flags of intimate partner violence. And I tend to share this slide no matter who I'm presenting to because it's important for us to keep in mind. The number 1 way that victim survivors find out about our services is through word of mouth. So if you notice any of these things, if you have concerns, if you just have a gut feeling, I encourage you to reach out to our hotline, ask how you can best navigate that situation if it feels too difficult, but also put it on me. I went to this presentation at Oaknell, and there was this lady, and she was talking about it, and I think maybe they could help. You can use my phone to call, or you can, I'll call and then I'll put you on the phone. They're pretty nice folks. It's a safe space. Everything we do is confidential, so there's no need for anyone to know that they've called. There's no way that gets out into the world. Some of the red flags to be on the lookout for in relationships are excessive jealousy, intimidation, humiliation, disrespectful of values and opinions, minimizes or blames. A lot of times we look at that like gaslighting. How many of you are familiar with that term? Some of you. So gaslighting is sort of constantly moving the goalposts or putting it on you. Is possessive and controls who you see, how you spend your time, and what you wear, even. Which those are just a few of the top ones, but the list is quite exhaustive. So, how can we church or book club or knitting club. I have gone to gardening clubs. I can speak anywhere, I promise, and I have lots of different types of presentations. One of my favorites is to work with Forever Green on their women's sort of bloom events that they do. They do one in the winter and one in the spring. And we just hang out around the table and plant stuff in pots and have some really nice casual conversations about how to support folks. In that environment, I've actually had, over the last few years, 5 different individuals come up and seek information from me so that they can get assistance. So you never know who needs the information. So the more we talk about it, the more we're able to take the power away from the perpetrator and put it back into the hands of the victim so that they can get the help and resources that they need. We always have different drives, different events throughout the community going on. A lot of different things that you mentioned. There's your church is doing drive in July, Christmas in July. We're around. In October, we do a shop for shelter event. We get about 3/4 of the items that we need. So peanut butter, formula, cereal, snack bars, diapers, wipes, all of those things. We actually get at that event in October. And lots of other stuff. So following us on social media, signing up for our newsletter if you signed in. Also signing in helps me with my grant, so I can say I spoke to people, since that's what my grant funds, and just inviting us into your circles of influence. This is more of what I just said. The quote at the bottom, I'd like to read. I actually had one of our advocates. We were discussing human trafficking victims specifically when she shared this with me. So DVIP provides safe shelter for human trafficking, sexual assault victims, as well as domestic violence and dating violence victims. So quite a broad range of individuals that we serve. But what she shared with me is giving people a safe space with their basic needs being met keeps them from returning to their abuser. And during that conversation, she went on to share how if you are in need of groceries or if you are in need of a roof over your head, it's here.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm going to. I will finish with saying basic needs roofs over our head is super important. So that is what we provide. And then I'll answer questions after we get to safety. I think that's a really appropriate thing. Thank you so much. And like I said, I'm happy to answer questions. Yes.
What about the giving, the emotional abuse from
Yeah.
this is all about this physical abuse and
Yeah.
stories.
I mean, some of what I talked about, those red flags, certainly are emotional abuse. You know, controlling, telling you you're wrong, making you feel guilty, putting it on you. One of the stories, so it would have been my first week actually working for UIP that I was at shelter, and they had just finished an intake. The kids had gone with our youth staff to go play. Mom was filling out paperwork. She had gotten the kids ready for school that morning. Husband went to work. She had their favorite animals, all of the things, right? They were ready to go. And everything was going great. I mean, as great as it could be in that moment. And she looked down and just began sobbing. We were like, okay, let's just take a minute, let's sit down, what's wrong? Her reply to myself and the advocate that was working with her was, he's right, I am stupid, I can't do anything right. And we were like, what? Like, that's not true, you've got your kids to safety. And it was because she realized when she looked down, she was still in her pajamas, had packed nothing for herself, and didn't have on a bra. And it was really the not having on a bra, it's that dignity piece. And that's the thing is, she's like, the bruises heal, all of that heals, but his track of language, his words still echoed in her head. I actually went down because we had an amazing clothing closet, was able to get a couple of bras in her size, got her everything she needed as far as that went, and she was able to then feel more like a person and a little less vulnerable and really process through some of those emotions with her advocate. But the emotional abuse is there, along with financial abuse. That's a huge.
Is there a siren?
That's okay.
Okay.
There's a tornado warning.
Yeah, is that a siren outside?
Yes, it is.
That's why I was like, that's Lindsay left us.